Jenny is one of the daughters of Bob Edwards, and she previously worked at Bourn Hall Clinic, the IVF clinic that Edwards established. Jenny was responsible for cataloguing the bulk of what is now the extensive Robert Edwards archive at the Churchill Archives Centre in Cambridge.
Hello everyone, my name is Jenny Joy and I'm one of Bob Edwards' 5 daughters. I'm going to share with you today just a few of my recollections of what it was like growing up in Bob Edwards' family. The first picture you can see is one of my father with his large dog called Butch. We were initially terrified of him when we were children, but Dad loved him and thought he was a proper dog. Possibly because the dog came from Yorkshire, where my father was born, but I also think it was partly due to his size. Anyway, we all grew to love Butch, of course, and his exuberances, which you could say match my father. On the right is a photo of my father doing DIY at Duck End Farm, which they moved to in 1978. It was one of his very favourite activities. You'd always see him pottering around the farm if we came to stay. Behind him doing the DIY is a bucket, and that symbolises the amount of time he spent watering his trees in the field he planted full of them next to the farmhouse. But he didn't just use one bucket. He used to take a whole truckload of full buckets in his pickup truck round to the field to water them regularly. So whatever my father deemed to be important in life, he always gave it endless energy and enthusiasm. Although I didn't know it at the time, we really did have an exciting young life. We moved to a new estate on the outskirts of Cambridge in 1963. It was an ideal place to grow up. We had lots of friends on the doorstep. We could cycle or walk to the local primary school, and there were plenty of activities for us to get involved with locally. There was a Cambridge music festival, and as all 5 of us played the piano, for a number of years we entered the music festival playing duets and trios, which was so much fun. My parents got involved in various activities locally, such as creating a play area for us all on the estate, which had a wonderful climbing frame. They helped to better connect the estate to the centre of Cambridge with a footpath. And my mother got involved in campaigning to have a skating rink in Cambridge, mainly because she so loved skating on the fens when she was a child. When we were young, we also had many day trips out. And the picture you can see is one of the 5 of us on the Gog Magog Hills. My father was always competitive when we went anywhere that had a hill, and he would always try to get to the top first. And he did exactly the same when he was in his 80s, and he came to see me for the last time in Shropshire and wanted to make it to the top of the local hill. Partly due to my mother's desire to go away to different places and my father wanting to go to conferences, we regularly travelled as a family of 7 when we were all still quite young. The first of these was a big trip over to America. We went on a liner called the France, which was really exciting. And I remember waiting on the docks in New York for the car to be craned out of the hold. When we came back, we brought with us one of the huge American swings, which we had in our garden for the rest of our childhood. After that, the trips tended to be across Europe in the school summer holidays. But it was very unusual for a family of 7 to travel across Europe like that in those days, and many of the places that we went to were certainly not used to tourists. My father used his expenses from conferences to pay for the petrol and some limited accommodation. Quite often we had to share the accommodation with him, and make sure nobody saw us and we got found out. In those days, they had very little extra money to spend on holidays. Waiting for my father to finish work regularly featured in our lives. At first, my mother waited with all five of us in the car at the Downing Street traffic lights, and I can remember that only too clearly. When she got fed up of waiting there, she then changed to waiting on the Downing site itself as close as possible to the Department of Physiology. Invariably, he wouldn't appear, so one of us used to get sent in to try and get him out. So we'd walk to the top of the 4 flights of stairs and try to do this. But invariably, he found one of his students to entertain us, and he carried on. So at least we got to know his students well, both there and when they came home for the regular social gatherings we had in Gough Way. It was really the 1969 paper in Nature about the first human fertilization in vitro that changed our family's life. We could have reporters at the door, we could have camera crews in our flower beds, and the phone never stopped ringing from that point onwards. There was also lots of negative press all about the new era that was to be ushered in as a result of our father's work, and this we could not ignore. So how did my parents escape the pressure of Cambridge and the fact that he was often away from his growing family? Well, they found a cottage in the Yorkshire Dales that was very close to the place that he'd been evacuated to during World War II. They could rent it on an annual basis and escape during most holidays, even though it was quite away from Cambridge. My father could get involved in activities such as dry stone walling, sheep dipping, and hay timing, which he'd loved as a boy, and he could love again and introduce us to it as well. And a local friend used to give us hens and ducks to play with too. So it was a great place to be for a complete escape. When we first got there, it was damp and full of mice, but my parents, as usual, used their huge enthusiasm to get it renovated. My father was here at one of his favourite places on earth just before Louise Brown was born. So reflecting on my father and the huge things that he achieved during his life, how did he do it? Well, I think this was for a number of reasons. Firstly, it was due to his upbringing in Manchester in a council house with parents who had little money, but there was a strong sense of community and the children probably all played together. It was due to his mother being adamant that her boys should have a good education so that they could get a better job than their father, who had been hurt during World War I and was disabled, so found it very difficult to get work. It was due to the fact that my father had 2 brothers who had equally as strong personalities as his. And this probably meant that arguments were a feature of the day when they spent time together. As a result of these experiences, some of the characteristics that define my father for the rest of his life became apparent. He was a really, really keen reader and would devour anything. He could talk on any subject at any time of day and to anybody. And frequently at home, he would start at 7 o'clock in the morning and still want to talk at 10 o'clock at night. And none of us could keep up with him. He always gave as good as he got in any argument. And he always was his own man, even if that made his life more difficult. Lastly, his experiences in the army, particularly in the Middle East and Palestine, meant that he met many people with very diverse backgrounds. This gave him a very cosmopolitan outlook on life, which he never lost. My father could never have achieved it all without my mother. In addition to being his wife, she was a very capable scientist in her own right who wrote or co-authored at least 35 papers during the development of IVF. She was also one of the first people to use IVF to create a herd of championship-winning Angora goats. She was also a wonderful mother to 5 girls, an active grandmother to 12 grandchildren. And to Dad, she was a tower of strength, his intellectual equal, and a scientific companion to him for over 50 years. Thank you.